Hello everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I, of course, am just another heavy metal maniac, and today I'm going to be going over all of the studio albums from none other than Brazilian metal legends, Sepultura, one of my all-time favorite bands. Now, I did originally do this ranking not too long ago, but I did that in a tier list format, so as you guys have seen with my past few videos, I'm going to be remaking all of the old tier lists, or discography rankings that I did in a tier list format. So, yeah, we're going to be going over all these studio albums from Sepultura once again. We're going over all 15 of their full length, so we're not counting EPs or any of that stuff. So, yeah, without further ado, enough of my ramblings, let's just get right into the video. Coming in at number 15, coming in dead last, it is their 1998 album, Against. Yeah, this album's pretty bad. This, of course, was the first album to feature Derek Green on the vocals after the departure of Max Cavalera. And, you know, obviously you lose a key member in some bands that really can make things go south for a while. And, yep, things kind of definitely took a turn for the worse here. The Derek Green era got off to a real rough start, to say the least. To me, Derek Green's vocals, he doesn't really gel with the rest of the band on this album. He kind of seems out of place, and he's still trying to very much find, you know, proper cadences and all, and he just kind of sounds out of place. But it's not just the vocals. The songs themselves, to me, they're just not very well written. They're kind of just poorly constructed. It's just the most boring, kind of tepid, nu metal, groove metal, and again, it's just not well written songs. I cut them a little bit of slack because this is kind of the first album where Andreas had to write pretty much an entire album by himself. But yeah, they really kind of screwed the pooch on this album. They kind of moved away from like the, you know, tribal Brazilian indigenous percussion. They try to shoehorn in kind of Japanese style percussion. Even you look at the album art, it looks kind of more Japanese kind of style art, but I don't know, it feels shoehorned. It just doesn't work at all. This album, there's a couple decent songs on it maybe, but for the most part, this is just a pretty not great album in my opinion. I probably never listen to it again. So yeah, Against, I like Derek Green now. I like the Derek Green era of Sepultura now, but yeah, it got off to a real rocky start. So Against, for me, it lands at number 15. It's the worst Sepultura album in my opinion. Coming in now at number 14, it is Nation, released in 2001. I will give this album credit in one area, the production. I think this album sounds pretty good. It definitely has better production than Against, which is why I ranked it higher, but really, from a musical standpoint, it's not much better than Against. Again, it's just nu metal, and it's just not good at all. I do enjoy some like older nu metal, but this is kind of the nu metal that I just really don't like. Just boring, down-tuned riffs, just kind of the same bounce groove in every song. It's just, again, there's nothing really music from the musical department to really salvage on this album. Uma Kara is probably the worst Sepultura song they've ever written. Holy shit, that song in particular is so bad. That's the only song I remember. I know there's a song on this album that features Jello from the Dead Kennedys, but I could not for the life of you tell you what song that was. Yeah, again, it's just a boring, completely forgettable album. None of the songs are memorable. Again, the production is pretty good. The production is better than Against, but that's really the only positive thing I can say about this album. So yeah, Nation, it's number 14. You know, it's not a good album really at all. At number 13, I have Alex, or Alex. I don't know if it's pronounced Alex or Alex, whatever. Came out in 2009. This album, to me, this is a concept album. Of course, it's based off of A Clockwork Orange, which cool, I guess. I don't know. I don't really care that much for A Clockwork Orange, if I'm being honest. But so I don't really care about the concept of this album, but. Yeah, again, to me, the problem with this album is that simply the songs are too short, and they really kind of just lack standout moments. And to me, this album came out after a really great concept album, which we'll get to later. So I feel like Sepultura should have spaced out their concept albums later, you know, unless you're like Mastodon or like Opeth. You know, very few bands can, the way I see it, very few bands can get away with releasing a bunch of concept albums in a row, and Sepultura tried that and they did not succeed in my opinion. This album is just, again, it's just boring. None of the songs really stand out. There's a bunch of there's like new metal in here again. This is 2009. At this point, new metal was very much dead and rotting in the ground. So like, I don't know why they tried to incorporate the kind of new metal riffs on this album again. I don't enjoy this album really at all. There's nothing about this album that makes me really want to go back to it. All right, coming in at number 12, we have Roarback, released in 2003. This album, coming off of Nation and Against, in many ways it's kind of a step forward, but it's also a step back at the same time. Namely, the big step back for me was the production. This album, I don't know, it feels like this album was just kind of banged out in a hurry, and like the production is just, it's like I don't know, it kind of sounds like a demo, like a slightly polished demo maybe. I don't know, the production does not sound complete on this album. And there's still a lot kind of hangover from like Nation and Against. There's again a lot of kind of new metal-y stuff on here, but this album is a bit of a shift because to me in this album they're finally kind of getting back to playing more like kind of thrash metal and less. They're slowly getting away from the whole new metal thing and they are playing again more thrash stuff on here. And there's a couple songs on here that I actually think are pretty good. Like I think the song Leech is pretty alright, and the song The Rift is not bad either. So, again, they're slowly getting away from the new metal thing that they got caught up in, but they're not at a fast enough rate for me to really enjoy this album. And again, the production drags it down too, so that's why Roarback for me lands at number 12. Alright, coming in now at number 11, it is Roots, released in 1996. This is obviously a very divisive album among the Sepultura fan base. There are some fans who absolutely hate this album. There are some people who say this is the worst album they ever put out. But on the other end, there are people who absolutely love this album. There are people who say this is Sepultura's best album. Me, I'm kind of more in the middle, but I lean towards that this is a not great album. I don't think it's the worst Sepultura album, as the ones I've named before I think are worse. Because there are some really good songs on here, like Roots Bloody Roots is a banger, Attitude is a pretty good song, Radamahata is pretty good too. But yeah, it's not hard to understand why this would be such a divisive album because, this obviously was their full-on departure into new metal, and yeah, I do have quite a few gripes with this album. For one, the length. This album is way too fucking long. It's almost no solos. Like, come on. Like, seriously, there's almost no guitar solos on this album. There is, again, it's too long for, like, what this is. They really could have trimmed off a lot of the fat. And also, there's some really bad songs on this album, like Look Away. I've always hated Look Away. I cannot stand that song. I think that song sucks. I hate that song. The rest of the songs, to me, none of them really stand out. They're just kind of boring. Again, it's new metal. It's down-tuned, uninteresting, uninspired riffs. And yeah, this obviously kind of caused a bit of a rift in the band. This is kind of, and obviously Max was kicked out shortly after this album came out. So, yeah, again, it is a very divisive album. Some people absolutely hate this album. Some people absolutely love this album. I'm kind of more in the middle. I think it's okay. I don't know. It's not an album I return to It's not an album I return to often, except for like the few songs I mentioned that I think are good. So yeah, for me, it's number 11. My number 10 choice is an album with a very long title. The mediator between head and hands must be the heart. I had to write that thing down because there's no way I was going to remember that. Yeah, this is a decent album in my opinion. This is a very heavy album, I think. Like at points this kind of borders on being like death metal, and alongside that kind of traditional Sepultura thrash sound. But the big thing I'm not really big on with this album is the production. This was obviously produced by Ross Robinson, who I don't think Ross Robinson is necessarily like a bad producer. To me, he's just kind of the wrong producer for a band like Sepultura. He's better off producing bands like Slipknot and bands like that, and as opposed to heavy like death thrash bands like Sepultura. So yeah, I don't like the production on this album, but there are some good songs on here. Trauma of War is pretty good. Impending Doom, Manipulation of Tragedy. I do enjoy this album, but it is lower on my list, which is why for me it lands at number 10. And again, had they given it a better production job, like one that wasn't as kind of, one that wasn't so Ross Robinson-y, I would have enjoyed this album more maybe. But yeah, it is a pretty decent album in my opinion, which is why for me it lands at number 10. Coming in now at number 9, it is their debut, Morbid Visions, released in 1986. First of all, my biggest gripe with this album is the god-awful production. Infamously, the guitars were not in tune when they made this album. The drums also sound really off to me. I can cut them a bit of slack for the production job. They were super young when they made this album, and also Brazil at this time was a dictatorship, and also desperately poor at this time, if I remember correctly. So yeah, I can't imagine it was easy to get your hands on proper recording equipment at this time. But this album to me is kind of very much a young band that has not found their sound yet at this point. There's a lot of like worship and tribute to like Celtic Frost. There's a lot of Celtic Frost worship on this album, really. I also say there's kind of strong hints of like Slayer, Venom, maybe even like a bit of Bathory thrown into the mix as well. But they do manage to write some good songs on this album. Troops of Doom, I think, is an awesome song. I like War. Show Me the Wrath is a pretty good song. Yeah, this is a decent album in my opinion. It's just, I think they just substantially improved from this debut, so that's why for me, Morbid Visions lands at number 9. Alright, coming in now at number 8, it is Kairos, released in 2011. This album to me was kind of a solid return to form after the I think I guess failed experiment that was Alex, but yeah, this album to me is pretty good. It's got good production, it's got nice crunchy guitars, and it's got some really good songs on it. Like I think the title track is really good, Mask is pretty solid, Born Strong I like, Embrace the Storm. This album is just kind of more middle of the road for me. It kind of does feel just a bit like Sepultura putting out a Sepultura album, and it does feel fairly kind of meat and potatoes. So yeah, it's not my favorite Sepultura album. It's not my favorite of the Derek Green era for sure, but I do think this is still a pretty solid album. So yeah, Kairos lands at number 8. Coming in at number 7, it is Dante 21, released in 2006. This to me was their comeback after that long period from Roots up until Roarback, where they were just releasing just frankly subpar albums in my opinion. This was a return to that traditional Sepultura sound. This is just thrash metal. This is just aggressive and very kind of heavy thrash metal. And now this is a concept album based on the Divine Comedy, Dante's Inferno. And I think this concept album I think they handled the concept on this album much better than they did on Alex. And again, and there's some bangers on here, like Dark Wood of Error is a really awesome song. I really like Convicted in Life too. Fighting On is pretty good. Buried Words, Nuclear 7. Yeah, there's some really good songs on here. Production is pretty good, I think. Derek Green at this point, he finally now gels with the rest of the band. He doesn't sound out of place like he did on Against. So yeah, I do really enjoy this album. I think this was a great comeback album. A solid return to form after a long period of just not good albums. So yeah, Dante 21 for me lands at number 7. Coming in at number 6 now, it is Machine Messiah, released in 2017. This album is a straight up banger, I must say. Yeah, this album is, again, it's just pure aggressive thrash metal. It is hostile as hell. No holds barred. This album is just kind of unrelenting, very heavy. Kind of, again, it's got death metal traces in there. It's kind of death thrash at points, but again, it's just very awesome, aggressive thrash metal. And there are some really, really killer songs on here. I Am the Enemy is really good. Phantom Self is a really good song. Iceberg Dances is a really awesome instrumental. And that's kind of one thing I noticed with Sepultura is that they're really good at writing really killer instrumental songs. Resistant Parasites is a banger. Vandal's Nest is really good too. Derek Green, I think I'm gonna go on record and say I think Derek Green is a better vocalist than Max Cavalera, and he's also a better lyricist too. Again, I mean, obviously with Max there is kind of the language barrier, so you can't blame him entirely. But I don't know. I think Derek Green is honestly a better vocalist than Max Cavalera, even though I do love Max. I think Derek just has a better delivery, better range, better cadence. So yeah, and I think he sounds absolutely great. Again, at this point, he gels with the band perfectly. There's killer riffs all over the place on this album. It sounds really good. It's got modern production, but it's not like overly clean, overly polished. It's still very heavy and got a lot of dirt and grit in my opinion. So yeah, Machine Messiah. I think this album is honestly an absolute banger, and it can rival their older albums in my opinion. I mean it. I like the older albums more, which is why for me it's at number 6. But it is Machine Messiah is a banger. Alright, coming in at number 5 now, it is Quadra, released in 2020. This is by far and away the best album of the Derek Green era, in my opinion. God damn, this album bangs. Like, a band this late in their career releasing an album of this high caliber is honestly, frankly, unexpected, because this honestly could go up against their older material, and I do really, really enjoy this album. The production again is great. It's got just thrashy bangers all over the place, great riffs, great groove. They aren't afraid to experiment a little with kind of prog and like atmosphere, and I think that really works. It really adds to the experience as opposed to taking away from it. And there's some really killer songs on here, like Isolation is amazing, Last Time, Capital Enslavement is a thrashy barn burner. Raging Void is awesome. Guardians of Earth is really cool. And another really killer instrumental they did was the song The Pentagram, which I think that song is really, really killer for sure. Yeah, I've got Quadra. I think this is an absolute banger of an album. I do really, really enjoy this album. Easily the best of their Green era, like I said, and this honestly could go toe-to-toe with their material from their kind of more classic era. It would lose to a couple in my opinion, but this is still a really solid album, and I do really enjoy it. So yeah, number 5 is Quadra. Coming in now at number 4, it is Chaos AD, released in 1993. This apparently is also a bit of a divisive album among the Sepultura fanbase, which there are some people who like legitimately hate this album and think it's one of Sepultura's worst albums, which if you're one of those people, I'm just going to say it, you're wrong. I kid, of course. You're entitled to your opinion, but man, I love this album. This is a bit of a departure for them. This was kind of their foray into groove metal territory as opposed to the heavy thrash that they were at this point kind of known for. But I think this is one of the greatest groove metal albums of all time. There are some absolutely killer songs in here that I just love. Refuse Resist is an incredible song. Territory is a banger. Slave New World is awesome. Biotech is Godzilla is awesome. Propaganda, Manifest, Nomad is a banger. It's not really the just heavy, intense thrash they were known for at this point, but man, this album is just grooves. The drum performance is fantastic. In comparison to some of their other older albums, this album maybe doesn't have as many heavy hitters, in my opinion, but the songs that do hit really hard. So yeah, for me, Chaos 80, number 4, I do love this album. This is, again, I think one of the best groove metal albums ever made, one of my favorite albums in that entire genre. Yeah, Chaos AD is an absolute fucking banger. Coming in at number 3, it is Schizophrenia, released in 1987. The improvements that were made from Morbid Visions to Schizophrenia in the span of a single year, to me the improvements are just absolutely massive. I think this album is absolute banger. The production is kind of it's better than Morbid Visions, but it's still not, it still could have been better. Obviously, this was Andreas Kisser's first album with the band, and I think he really brought his own unique feel and vibe to this band, and I think he contributed a lot to the songwriting in a way that made Sepultura stand out a lot more in comparison to the other Belo Horizonte bands that were kind of popping up during this time. And there are just some absolutely killer songs in here. From the Past Comes the Storms honestly might be my favorite Sepultura song. I absolutely love From the Past Comes the Storms. It's an amazing song. To the Wall is absolutely incredible. I love Escape to the Void. Inquisition Symphony, again, is an absolutely killer instrumental piece. I love Inquisition Symphony. R.I.P. Rest in Pain is incredible too. Screams Behind the Shadows. Yeah, this it is just heavy, it's thrashy, but, compared to Morbid Visions, where it was just kind of a lot of, worship and tribute, I feel like, to a lot of different bands, at this point, Sepultura very much carved their own unique sound. Again, it's heavy thrash metal, but they also do kind of have a gift for, like, atmosphere and melody, and I think that really made them stand out quite a lot in the thrash metal scene. And obviously, Sepultura would go on to become one of the most influential bands, in not just in thrash metal, but in metal in general. And yeah, Schizophrenia, I do really love this album. I think it is absolutely incredible. Again, if the production was better, if the production was, say, that like it was on these next two albums, it might be my number one. But there are two albums that beat it out for me. Still, Schizophrenia, number 3. I love it. It's an absolute amazing album. Coming in now at number 2, it is Arise, released in 1991. This is a perfect thrash metal album in my opinion. I love pretty much, I don't have a single gripe with this album, really. I love all the songs. It's fast, it's aggressive, it's to the point. But again, there's great kind of melodies on here, and there's really great atmospheric sections. And, the production is great, and obviously produced by, Scott Burns. And I think he did a wonderful job on this album. Everything's tight and punchy and crunchy. Yeah, and this is an absolutely just, again, the title track alone is an amazing. It already kind of elevates this album to god tier status. Dead Embryonic Cells is probably my favorite song off the album. I love the shit out of that song. Desperate Cry is amazing. Meaningless Movements, Infected Voice is a banger. Yeah, this is kind of a gold standard for thrash metal. Really, again, the production on this album is perfect. This album is just perfect in my opinion. I don't have a single negative thing to say about this album. I will jam it until the day I die. It is an absolutely amazing album. So, yeah, for me, it lands at number 2. Alright, coming in now at number 1. This is my favorite Sepultura album. It's Beneath the Remains, released in 1989. This album, again, I have zero gripes with this album. I think this album is honestly perfect. And again, I just love all the songs in here. The production is perfect. Again, produced by Scott Burns. For 1989, this is like a perfect sounding album. Yeah, I love, I love the title track. Inner Self is one of my favorite Sepultura songs. Lobotomy is amazing. Slaves of Pain, Sarcastic Existence, Mass Hypnosis. Oh my god, all these songs hit hard. They hit you right in your gut. This album is just thrashy, it's aggressive, it's heavy, the guitar tone. Again, I love pretty much everything about this album. It's a perfect album, like I said. This is one of my all-time favorite albums. This is one of my all-time favorite thrash metal albums. I freaking love... I love pretty much everything about this album. I could listen to this album. I will listen to this album on repeat. It is frequently in my rotation, so... Yeah, Beneath the Remains is my favorite Sepultura album. I think this is the very pinnacle of Sepultura. And, yeah, that's number 1. I love this album. And, well, that about does it. If you made it to the end of this video, you're awesome, and I appreciate you. Do consider leaving a like on this video. Consider leaving a comment down below. Tell me, what do you think about these albums? What do you think about my placements? Do you agree? Do you disagree with my ranking? Let me know. Do consider subscribing, because I do have a lot more content coming your way. And like I said, that about does it. I, of course, am just another Heavy Metal Maniac. I'll see you all sometime in the future. In the meantime, all of you take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.